Welcome to the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, the show that puts the spotlight on the incredible women who fuel the world of motorsports. From drivers to crew members, engineers to fans, and everyone in between, we're here to celebrate the trailblazers, dreamers, and doers shaping the sport we love. Each episode, we share inspiring stories of females of all ages from every corner of the motorsports universe, past, present, and future. It's a journey through the seasons of life filled with heartfelt moments, laughter, and a whole lot of horsepower. So, whether you're a lifelong fan, a racer yourself, or simply curious about the extraordinary women behind the wheel, settle in, relax, and enjoy a fun and uplifting ride with us. This is the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, connecting and celebrating women in motorsports, one story at a time. Let's hit the track. Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. And I have an old friend with me. And I don't mean old as in age. I mean old as in I've known her since about 2018. She was one of the first young girls that I met at PRI back in 2018. She was just a little girl then. And she and her dad and I went to lunch. And we've been really good friends ever since, even though we don't see each other very often. But I'm so glad to have her on the show today because Audrey Gerberding has really grown and changed and is doing amazing things. And so I'm so glad that you could be with me today, Audrey, because I want people to see, how you started and where you are and what you're going to be doing moving forward. So welcome to the show.
Thank
And
you.
why don't you start? I know your story a little bit, but why don't you start by telling us just a little bit about yourself?
I am 19. I attend the University of Northwestern Ohio in Lima, Ohio, for automotive and high performance. So that's always fun because it's
Hmm.
great. I'm originally from the Springfield, Illinois area. My dad was raised there, so that's where we stayed. And then I have a little brother and a dog, and I don't know, pretty simple. There's not a lot going
How
on in
old's
my
your
life.
brother now?
Uh, 14.
Yeah,
I think he just had a birthday a couple months
he
ago.
was just a little guy when I
He
first
was.
met you. Yeah, for
He
sure.
was. He's not so
So
little anymore. He's almost
I'm
a foot
sure he's
taller than
not.
me.
I'm sure he's very tall, tall. So Audrey, I know you've been racing and been involved in motorsports for a long time, but tell us your story. Go back to the beginning. How did you get involved in motorsports?
Oh, all the way back at the beginning. So my dad had some buddies that ran the open go-karts, dirt track stuff around home, and I've been around it since I was little. I don't know anything other than race cars on Saturday nights. Sometime around like my either first or second birthday, there's a picture of me in somebody's funny car. I don't remember whose it is, but there's a picture floating around out there of me in a funny car, and I was like little. The steering wheel was bigger than me, and that's kind of where it all. I remember. I don't remember sitting in the car, but I've seen that picture so many times, and you can kind of pinpoint it to stuff like that, where we were around that, and then we were around all the go karts, and then we'd be around this, and we like there was always something going on. And so about the time I turned probably 5 or 6, I realized that I wanted to race one, and the flat carts that we were around didn't have seat belts, didn't have any of the like cages, didn't have any of that stuff. And my mom was helping at the track at the time and was around when some stuff happened. There were some people that had to get like life flighted out of there and stuff. She's like, no, we're not doing that. So she made my dad go find something else that had seatbelts and a cage and was going to protect me if something happened. And so we found quarter midgets. And they met all of her requirements, so that was an instant win. And my buddy knew a guy who his daughter was moving up to the next class, and her car was sparkly pink and black. So they went and put me in it one year. Like at the end of the year, they were doing a big race real close to home, and they put me in it. And I remember, as the story goes, that I they had to like pull me out of it to get me out of it. Like I was holding on to it like with a death grip. Is how the story goes. I don't remember any of that, but that's how they claim. So from that moment, my dad knew that he wasn't going to get me away from that car. And so we bought it and we painted it pink, hot pink, and it just kind of went way down the line. So we raced court. That was in 2016. I would have been 7. No, that would have been like 2013. I would have been 7. So we did that for like 2 years. 2 years after we bought that car, we found an outlaw kart, which is a little bit bigger. It's more of the go-kart style. They were racing that at the track where they were racing all the go-karts. And so we ended up going back there. I ran an outlaw kart. We also had a hot pink outlaw kart because I had a pink obsession. I still do. But we ran that for 2 years, kind of moved up through a couple of classes there, went back to the quarter midgets when my brother was old enough to start racing. Because if you ask my dad, I was just the trial run for my brother. And then my little brother like didn't want to do it, and I picked up on it and we ran with it. But if you ask my dad, he was doing it so when he got to my brother, he would know what was going on. So we went back to quarter midgets for 2 years for my brother to go through the novice program and get all the basics. And that was the year that we ran with the USAC series. And we went to, that was the year that we got to make a lap on IMS. We raced in the parking lot at IMS, and then we all got to make a lap at IMS, which we still hold the record for the most cars on the track that year.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, my granddaughters were there.
Yep. That was pretty cool because the way that they set it up on IMS was that the first like 3 rows were all championship rows. But a lot of those kids that ran quarter midgets ran 2 or 3 or 4 cars. So obviously you can only have one kid in one car. So after like the first like 3 championship rows, they started alphabetically. And so when they pushed everybody forward through all the missing spots, my name, because it starts with an A, I was up in the beginning of the alphabet rows. So if you look in the picture, I'm actually in the championship row of the picture, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
That was pretty cool. And like I didn't realize it at the time, but that was like a big deal. That was IMS, and that year we also got to go to 4 Crown Nationals at Eldora. So that was a pretty cool. I'm glad we went back so we could do that.
Yeah.
I remember being really mad that he was taking me out of the outlaw cart and putting me back in a quarter midget, because that was about the time we started making progress in an outlaw cart, and I remember being like really mad. And then while we were doing that, we were also running the outlaw cart and the quarter midget. Like we'd run Friday night, both of them. Saturday we'd run the outlaw cart, and Sunday we'd run the quarter midget. And so like by the time the weekend was over, I had turned 200 laps in those cars. So it was a lot for that year or two that we ran everything. But that was a learning year, and I'm really glad that we did that. Yeah. Now looking back, at the time I hated it, but
that was a lot. But you know, looking back, and this is always how it works, Audrey. You think it's the worst thing happening at the time, and then as you move down in life's path, you look back and you're like, wow, that was really meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. Like that was a big learning curve for me. And one of the things that we found out, especially with me, is sometimes I need to have a lot of laps in a car to be consistent. So Friday would come and we'd have decent laps, but by the time Saturday would come, our laps were better than Friday. But by the time we get to Sunday and I had ran both cars all weekend, our laps were the best they ever were on Sunday. Yeah. And it's just because I had consistent, and we've used that knowledge moving forward. Yeah. But that was one of those big eye-opening moments where it's like, oh, that needs to happen in this order.
Yeah. Well, and the more seat time, as you know,
right.
the more
exactly
you're going to get better. So what happened after quarter midgets then?
So we went outlaw carts, and then I turned 13, 14. It would have been in 2019. We had the outlaw kart stuff had kind of died off around us. Everybody was kind of moving up. And so we knew we needed to make a jump. And I knew I wanted to go the stock car route. And so we were like looking at all this stuff, looking at B mods, looking at A mods, looking at late models, looking at all this stuff. And we couldn't, like, there was always something that was holding us back. And then we found this kids mod series. So what the kids mod series is, it's an 8 to 16 series specifically designed for kids to be able to make the jump into a big car, but not be outrunning with somebody that's in a B mod or an A mod. So you've got that year to kind of make the progress, or however many years you want to use it for. You get to make your progress. And so we made the jump. I say I was like 13 at the time.
Yeah.
And we took that car. The car we had was actually the original series car, designed by Bob Pierce for Bobby Pierce. When Bob created the series, it said BPKM #1 on it. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that was my birthday present that year. And I remember that year I came home from school, or I've been out doing something, came home from school, and this modified is sitting in our garage, and I like freaked out because my dad and I had gone and looked at it, but nothing else ever happened. And so my mom and my dad brought it home for me one day, and it's sitting in my garage, and I was like, whoa. So that was pretty cool. And that year when we bought it, it had a completely blue body on it. And that was the year that I took over doing all of my own body work. We turned everything on that car white, put pink plastic on it, white body on it. Everything on that car went from boy orange blue to girl pink, hot pink white. And that was kind of where it kind of took off. We were running that series 15 nights a year. I was doing my own body work. I was doing most of my own maintenance on it. And I had kind of done some of that like within the outlaw kart stuff, but like the big car kind of made a big difference. And so that was the year my dad was like, listen, you can have this car, but you're old enough to start handling some of this. And so that was when it all it went fast. So we ran that car for 3 years. I eventually aged out of that series, which I can put a lot of learning moments in that series as well. And that was definitely a good move for us. And then in the last year of that series, I knew I was aging out of that series, so we knew we were going to have to make a jump. So that year we bought a UMP Modified, as well as having a kids mod. So we had 2 Modifieds now. It got even more crazy. And the goal when we bought the UMP mod was to just kind of use it, get it ready throughout the year. By the time the end of the year came, hit some practice nights at the end of the year, and kind of jump into it the next year. Well, that plan all changed when my dad said, let's call Jake Griffin. Jake had kind of done some of the same path that I had, started in quarter midgets. My dad had a pretty good relationship with Jake. And so he called Jake and said, hey, we've got this car. Is something you would like to do to kind of shake down this car, get it set up, put us on the right path? And Jake was all in. So that year, we ran 2 cars, 2 trucks, 2 trailers, 2 everything to the track that year. And I was driving the kids mod, also working on Jake's mod, and doing everything through the week. That was a lot. That summer was packed.
Yeah.
And the very first night Jake went out in that mod, he went out and won a heat race. Come back and the headers are falling off of it and all this. And my dad and I look at each other and we're like, well, this plan just changed. Because we had thought, you're all right, we're gonna go put a heat cycle through it, tighten all the bolts, No, Jake came back and won a heat race. And it's like, oh, well, that just changed our path here. So Jake took that car and ran with it. I think he ran 8 nights with it that year, 8 or 10 nights with it that year, while we were running kids mods. And he was a really big help for me, especially getting to have that kind of mentor relationship with him. And you call him, even now I can call him and say, hey, I've got a car that's doing this. What are your thoughts? And he'll answer and tell me. for the most part. So it was really good for me to have that kind of secondary opinion, kind of thought process to bounce stuff off of. Because at some point, while my dad is super smart and knows what he's talking about, he doesn't have the seat time. And so for Jake to say, "Oh, I know what that feels like in a car," was a big thing for me. We made a lot of improvements that year, even in the kid mod that we've been running for 3 years. So that year, Jake ran it. I took it over the next year, which would have been 21, I believe. All these years blend together.
They all follow. Yeah, exactly.
They all merge. So I took it over in 21, 22. And I ran 2 full seasons with it, 3 full seasons with it. And just did the same thing we did in the kid mod. Just we were out to complete laps, we were out to complete nights, and we had a lot of nights where something would happen and we didn't finish a night. And that was really frustrating for me, especially. And I think what frustrated me the most was that I saw the car do it because Jake had done it. And so it was like, well, now it's a me thing. And so once I got past the it's a me thing, then our nights started to get better. But we ran 12 or 15 nights a year in that car for 3 years. And then 2 years ago, would have been my senior year in high school, or a year and a half ago, we ran our last full season in it. And we had a rough year, but we got through it. We had a bunch of top 10s. I think we even had a couple top 5s, which is a big deal for us, because I'm running with guys like Kenny Wallace and Kenny Schrader, and which is a big deal. And you're like, you walk up to Kenny Wallace and he's like, "Hey, Audrey, how are you?" And I'm like, he knows my name.
That's pretty cool.
That was pretty cool. So it's kind of stuff like that where we made the jump into the A mods, knowing that we were going to be with a group of guys that was going to not have issues with me.
Yeah.
And I built that sort of respect with all of those guys where I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
And so last year would have been our last full season. We ran 2 nights this last year. So I moved to Ohio in June, and at the end of last year, we sent our motor off to get refreshed really, really late, and we didn't get it back till like late spring after stuff had kind of already started. And so at that point, I was working on graduation from high school. I was working on trying to figure out what I was going to do to move to Ohio. So the race car kind of got pushed to the side. And so I ended up going home one weekend, like middle of June, drove home after class, got home real late, got up the next day, threw the motor in the car, hooked all the rest of it up, decided we were going racing that Saturday night. And we went and raced because I was like, I can't live without a race car in my life.
Yeah.
And we had a really good night up until the feature. I think I had qualified really well. I started on the front of a heat race. Everything was going really great. And then like 4 or 5 laps into the feature, we had a parts failure, which was not fun at all because I was like in second, I think. And that was a rough night. There were arguments. There was loud conversations that night. I'm sure the people parked halfway across the pit knew what we were saying, and it was great. So we pushed the car back in the trailer, took it home. That was Saturday night. I had to leave Sunday morning to be back in Ohio. So I kind of said, "Car's your problem. See you later, Dad." And yeah. So then when I was off for a long break in August, I went home and we were going to fix it. He finished putting stuff back together, had the car loaded, ready to go, went to a track. It's a real rough weekend. A bunch of places had rained out. So we drove like 2.5 hours to the closest open track. I was like, I need to race. And ended up in a pretty bad accident. Due to some bad calls and some other stuff that happened. I ended up in the back, and I had determined that I was moving forward, And by the time I went to dive under some cars to make a pass, there was a guy sitting in front of me sideways, and I just smacked him, and it screwed up our chassis pretty bad. And it's not fun. We had another set of loud conversations.
Yeah.
And not a fun night, but those things happen, and we just fix it and move on.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned over the last few years is you just got to fix it and move on and move past it, because you can't be held up on it forever. There's still something that's got to happen that week.
And it's racing. I mean, I say this to kids all the time. This is a sport that when you get into it, you're going to lose more than you're going to win.
Yep.
And most kids can't handle that. And I think that's why kids that are in racing, and not all, but overall, I think, especially the girls that I talk to, grow up faster, are more mature when things go wrong than girls who don't. Because, yes, you had some loud conversations, I'm assuming, between you and your dad.
Yeah.
But, if you weren't passionate about what you were doing, you would be like, oh, well,
right.
And away you go. And he's known that you were passionate since you were a little girl.
Yeah.
So he's frustrated too, because he wants you to be able to race. And if you're in second place, he wants you to do the best you can. So it isn't you that he's mad at. He's just frustrated, just like you were. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a long weekend, both weekends, but
yeah,
we fix it and move on. And once that stuff started happening, we had a couple of years throughout everything, or we'd have months where we'd go and we wouldn't finish races because parts failures, caught in an accident, something due to my fault, I wasn't driving the car right, whatever. You just got to fix it and move on and know that you're in a race next weekend.
Yeah.
And that was something that I had to learn. And I struggled with it for a long time. Was you just got to learn to move past it. You can't be stuck on last weekend, because this weekend's coming.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not.
Well, and when you listen, of course, me, I listen to NASCAR. So when somebody wrecks in a NASCAR and they're like, oh, they interview them, they're like, oh, blah, blah, we'll look towards next weekend. And sometimes the announcers are like, oh, they all say that. Well, that's what they have to do.
Right.
Did somebody purposely put him in the wall? Okay, they might remember that for the next few races and retaliate. But overall, the only thing they can do is look to the next week. And so, that's something that you just have to learn, not only as a kid in racing, but, that's kind of a life lesson. Excuse my French, shit happens and you got to keep going.
Yeah.
You can't let it stop you in your tracks, for sure.
Yeah.
So Audrey, are you going to race at all this year? I know where you go to school, it's year round.
Yes. So I will probably most likely not be in my car this year. There is a possibility that I could be in a driver's seat this year, though. The school that I'm at has a motorsports team. So we have, this was like the big deciding factor for this school, was that they had race cars. And they've got 4 modifieds, 2 street stocks, and a couple other various things. That is student driven, student worked on, student led. And so I am waiting to hear back from the race team on that. At some point in the next few weeks, I should be getting a call for an interview and then move forward with that. So there is a chance that I will be behind a driver's seat this year. I don't know how high of a chance, but there is a possibility.
Because there are kids older than you in the program too. I get that.
Yeah, and you have to audition into it, and there's a whole other. You have to make the team before you can audition into the drive. It's a whole other.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it'll happen or not. I'm gonna give it a go if I can, but that's all still up in the air right now. I would love to be on the race team, but I also have some other stuff in the works right now.
Okay.
It's not the race team, so I will be around racing at some point. I just don't know of what variety.
Yeah. So, you're going to school for automotive and high performance.
Yep.
So does that mean that, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of different kinds of jobs that would entail, but if you had your dream job, what would it be?
This is such a hard question to answer because there's so many options.
We'll give you a couple.
I think, okay, so my dream job, I would love to be behind a wheel somewhere, but I know that there's only so many seats open for that. My other thought, I see myself like probably 5, 10 years down the road. I see myself in more of probably a crew chief situation, or of some variety, because I have the seat time to back everything up, and I've learned how to kind of handle knowing what the car is doing and learning how to like work on it. So I think I would like to be. I think this is the first time I've actually spoken this into words.
Okay.
I think I would like to be a crew chief somewhere.
So we're putting it out in the universe.
I think that's the first time I've spoken that out loud.
Okay, so that's a good thing because we know that we have to speak things out loud in order for them to come true.
Exactly.
So there you go. And we don't have any women, at least in the NASCAR series, top 3 series, no women crew chiefs. There's about time to get one. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And but the other thing is if that opens up, but I know that there's so many opportunities in everything. Like this school has a drag team and a drift team and the dirt team, and like there's so many opportunities for anything that if somebody calls me and says, "Hey, I want you to come be my crew chief on a monster truck," I'm going to say, "All right, I'll be there."
Right.
How soon can I be there? Cuz I'm on my way.
Yeah.
And so I'm to the point where it's like anything that comes open, I'm saying yes to.
Yeah.
Because anything could lead anywhere.
Exactly. And so if you listen to any of the shows that I do, especially when you talk to women who might be engineers or, Jamie Little, who's an announcer, they'll all tell you they started out by volunteering.
Right.
They volunteered somewhere at a little podunk track, and then somebody heard them and they moved up and they moved up and they moved up until finally, she announces on the truck series. And I believe now she's doing IndyCar. And so, you can't think that you're too good to start at the bottom because you never know where that's going to lead. Yeah. And that's what you're willing to do.
Well, that's part of one of the things that I have in the works right now. There is a series that is an open wheel series in the Ohio, Indiana area that's looking for a student race director. And so I applied for it.
Awesome.
So
wouldn't that be fun?
Exactly. There's like 12 tracks we go to, like 25 nights. You basically travel with the series, but it's all volunteer. I mean, they give you some gas money, but it's all volunteer. So that's something I'm working on. But if anything comes up, it's like, ooh, that would be fun. Let's apply to that. Ooh, let's apply to that. And I just keep putting myself saying yes, and here we are.
Right. And the thing is, you just don't know where that's going to lead.
Exactly.
And on a resume, the fact that you volunteered shows your passion and shows that you're willing to do anything to keep your hand in the sport. So I'm going to pray about that for you because I think that would be an awesome thing to do for the summer.
It sounds really fun to me.
It does sound like a lot of fun. So you go to school, you're doing all this other stuff. How do you take care of Audrey? What do you do to keep kind of a balance in your life?
Oh, that's a good question because I'm still working on that.
Let me tell you, it doesn't get any easier as you get older.
Great. I feel like I've gotten a pretty good balance, especially since moving to Ohio. Not that I didn't have one at home, but I've learned especially how to kind of live on my own, which has been an eye-opener.
Yeah.
And so that's been like a whole big thing is trying to balance school and a job and dealing with this and having a social life. And I mean, everything that's going on, it's not always great. There's nights where I come home after work and I just pass out.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, we're not doing that again for another week. Let's wait on that. But I kind of just go with the day, how the day flows, and if I've got downtime, I'm probably gonna sleep because I'm tired.
Yeah.
And you just kind of work with what you got, and
Hmm.
I probably should be better about it, but
It
I'm
takes
working on
time,
it.
and it takes a routine, and sometimes that's hard because in school they give you different projects, and there's really not a definite routine. So I mean that's
Yeah.
hard, but
One of the big things that I've found that helps me is I have a massive planner that's got days and months and all this stuff in it. So I've got all my school stuff written in it. I've gotten
you mean something like
exact
this?
exactly. Mine is exactly like that, only it doesn't have all the fun stickers on it. It's gonna get them, I promise.
I'll send you
Um,
some women's motorsport stickers.
um, but that's something that's helped me is having my planner. I have a paper one, and then I have one that's on my phone
Hmm.
because I always have my phone with me. So I can always look at my calendar. Somebody says, "Oh, do you want to do this in 2 weeks?" I'm like, "I don't know. That's 2 weeks away. Let me look at a calendar."
Yeah.
And so that's been a big thing for me is like looking at a calendar to know where I am,
Hmm.
especially since our school schedule is set up so different, and we don't run in full semesters. We run in 6 week sessions.
Yeah.
So you're like, "Oh, I got to handle this 6 weeks," but wait a minute, there's another 6 weeks coming, and you're you're trying to handle. It's a lot, but you just kind of know where you're at, and you sit down on Sunday and you say, all right, here's what we're doing for the week.
Yep.
You at least have an idea. It's going
Exactly.
to change, but you at least have a general idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So Audrey, do you have a favorite memory from all of your racing?
I don't like this question either because there's so many.
Okay, a couple favorite memories. I know you've been
Uh,
successful in racing, so um,
okay, so
but it might not even be one thing. Maybe it's, my favorite memory from racing is all the time I got to spend with my family. And I put those words in your mouth because I know you got a great family. So you can't use that one.
I can't use that one. That's not
No, but
fair.
what else could it be?
Okay, so one of the ones that comes to mind is a pretty recent one. But for the last about 3 or 4 years, um, there's a girl named Alex Taylor.
Hmm.
And I have this sounds really weird. I have seeked her out when she's been close to me.
Hmm.
I go and see her every year at PRI, and I'm like, Alex, and she like we know who each other are at this point. We've seen each other enough. But I'm like, I need my yearly Alex Taylor picture, and like, this last summer when she did drag week and she came through Hebron, Ohio, me and one of my roommates drove to Hebron and met Alex and watched some drag and drive stuff.
Yeah.
A couple years ago when drag week came through Springfield, Illinois, they were like 20 minutes from my house, so we went and sat and watched drag cars. And
Yeah.
so she's somebody that I have like that's fairly recent, so that's a memory that I
Yeah.
have. But like I have a collage on my wall in my bedroom, and I think there's three Alex Taylor pictures in it because like, oh, that's a cool thing. Oh, I remember doing that. So
Yeah.
she's pretty cool. I like her. Something else
And you kind
that
of look up to her. It's the
yeah,
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
and I feel like she's somebody I can follow. And if you ask my dad, I about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I was like, didn't want anything to do with welding, none whatsoever. And then she got on Hot Rod Garage and started welding, and all of a sudden, Audrey wants to weld.
Yeah.
And so
My
when
husband's a welder.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's actually what I have for class right now.
Okay.
And so I sent Alex a message. I was like, hey, guess what I'm doing in class today? I
Yeah.
was like, we're in welding. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's so fun. But it was
So
like,
let me tell
there's,
you a funny story. When I was in high school, Audrey, you weren't even born. I graduated in 1974, but when I was in high school, they had like you took a semester of welding, a semester of like woodworking shop, and a semester of like home ec, like cooking and all that. I guess they thought they were preparing us for life. I don't know. And I had really long hair, and I was welding, and I could smell something burning, and I took the helmet off, and my hair was on fire, singeing. And so that was the last time. Even the teacher said, "Okay, I don't think this is for you." I didn't think it was for me either. So that's my experience with welding. It didn't last very long, but there's a lot of women that do weld. Yeah,
There's a lot.
yeah.
There's a lot. And I'm really excited for having this welding, because I'm gonna sidetrack a little bit. Um, I was a recipient of the Jesse Combs Foundation Scholarship this year,
Yes, I
and
know.
one of their big things is welding and fabrication.
Hmm.
So now that I've taken this class, now I can kind of help move forward with their stuff.
Yeah,
So I'm really thankful that I got this welding when I did.
yeah.
So I can kind of move forward with that stuff as well. But yeah.
I saw you at PRI, which was cool. You were there with those other gals that were part of that. Um, how do you apply for that? How did you get that?
So that scholarship, um, so the whole deal with that scholarship is it's open from, don't quote me on these dates, early April to the end of June is roughly the time frame. I don't know the exact dates. Um, but you apply for it on the Jesse Combs Foundation page. There's an apply button when it opens. It goes through a big long list of stuff you have to have. Don't be like scared of it. It's like really scary because you have to like record this video and you're like it's a whole lot. And I didn't want to record the video and didn't want to do it. But I did it. My dad made me do it, and I'm thankful he did. But they select. It just kind of depends on how many people apply. This year there was, I believe, 15 new girls. The first year there was 7. There are 50 of us now altogether that have received the scholarship. And we kind of just go do things to support the foundation.
Hmm.
Part of our deal is getting to continue Jesse's legacy
Yeah,
and making a difference in the little girls' minds that there is somebody out there for them.
right.
And PRI was my first JCF event. Um, that was really fun.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to go do more of these,
right.
but it was a really intimidating because you're like, whoa, this is like a whole different like setup. And it was kind of cool because none of those girls had been to PRI before. And
Oh,
I'm over here,
you're
I'm
an
like,
old man.
I've been to PRI for like 8 years. And
Yeah,
so I'm like, all right, we're gonna go do this and do this and do this. And they're
yeah.
like, whoa. Which they've all been to like SEMA and everything, but I mean,
Your eyes
I
different.
PRI is different. And so when we were like talking, we do like monthly meetings so everybody kind of gets a chance to check in, whatever. They're talking about PRI. They're like, who's going to PRI? And I was like, me? I will drive myself to PR. It's fine. It's actually
Mhm.
halfway between home and Ohio, so
Yeah,
it's great. Um, and they're like, well, none of us have been to PRI before, and I was like, great. I've been there.
you'll be the
Let's.
leader.
I'll
Yeah,
be the
for sure.
leader. So it was kind of cool getting to go and do all of their stuff.
Yeah.
It was a little different this year. Like usually we walk 20,000 steps a day. I don't think I walked more than 10,000 any of the days I was there.
Uh-huh.
It kind of depends on who you're with and what's going on.
Well, plus
It
you were
was
there. You were also there for the Women with Drive, the WIMNA,
it was.
and
That
so
was really cool too.
that is something that I think every girl should go to every year. And it's going to be back in Indy next year, right before PRI. So it couldn't be a better time or place. And I am 200% behind what they do because
Absolutely.
it absolutely changed my future of some things that I decided I can't do all of this, so I'm going to not do this. I'm going to focus on this. And the women there are um, so inspiring, I guess would be the word. So yeah, it was great to see you there for sure too. I love it.
I know we got our once a year meetup.
Yeah, we did. We absolutely did. We've done that now for several years. So you used
Yeah,
to hang out in my booth and
I did.
help and that. So
First
yeah,
time we met.
yeah, for sure. You're like family, Audrey, for sure.
I remember going to that first lunch going, what are we doing here? Like I remember dad didn't like he like tried to explain to me what it was and I was like, no, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And then you started, I was like, oh, this is kind of
You were
cool.
little. You were
I
little.
was.
I mean, you were very young. And but your dad had reached out to me and then he said, "Hey, would you want to go to lunch?" And yeah, absolutely. And so we went to lunch and that was the beginning. I came to watch some racing and met you in Iowa. Remember when it was so hot, and we did that. So we've done some fun things together, even though we live a ways apart, for sure.
Yeah.
So Audrey, social media is kind of my last topic of, is it something that you use or did use for your racing? And if so, how do you feel about social media and using it? How does it help you and that kind of thing?
I'm just going to start by saying I am way behind the 8 ball on social media.
Okay.
It's something I struggle to keep content on it. We do use it. I have a Facebook and an Instagram, and I believe even a YouTube.
Okay.
I think I've posted to YouTube once. So
All right.
I'm working on getting more content out, especially now that I'm doing more hands-on kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest thing is I do stuff, but I forget to do the content side of it.
Yeah.
So thankfully, like if you're ever around me, my dad does like a lot of my social media. And I am so thankful that he does, because race night comes and it goes out the door.
Yeah.
And he handles it, which is really, really great. And he's really good at handling it. And so I'm like, here, you can just have this. But
we could find you though on under your name and.
Yep. So my Facebook and my Instagram are both under Audrey Gerberding Motorsports. Okay. And then I'm on Facebook personally under Audrey Gerberding too.
Okay.
So I share a lot of stuff on both pages. They're kind of the same thing. Yeah. But not. And I'm working on like pushing more content out, especially now that I'm in a welding class. I have a lot of content from the last couple of weeks of class that I need to put together. Yeah. So I'm working on that, and it's something that now that I have a little bit more free time, because I don't have a race car to deal with, I can do, but then I don't have as much content because I don't have a race car. So I'm trying to find the middle there, but I'm working on it.
But there's also a lot of things that you're doing, even at school, that you can show other girls, hey, this is a great school to go to if you want to do this or want to and so, you'll find your balance and your spot, and you'll know when it's right. So yeah, for sure.
And that was one of the big things that every time around PRI time, everybody's doing all their content. I'm like, I need to do content, and then it never gets done.
I know.
That was one of the big things that I pulled from WMNA, the summit, was that is and I know it's a big deal, and I'm behind, and I don't use it like I should, but it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff to be gained from it. Probably more than I realize, even as a 19-year-old who exists in a social media world.
Right.
There's a lot, and I need to make better use of it.
I interviewed Kylie Glick, and she does really, really well, and her family helps her with social media. And that was a really, really good podcast about how she uses it and how it does really help. And it's more about quality, not quantity. So, and they don't have to be long, etc. So, you'll get it. You'll get it for sure. So Audrey, I don't have any other questions for you, but I just want you to know, it feels like I'm sitting in the same room with you. I'm so glad we got to connect today. Is there anything at all that you want to share that we haven't talked about?
Not that I know of.
No. I love seeing
there's something, but I don't know.
I love seeing you grow up and the things that you're doing, and I hope that you get to that crew chief position or somewhere along that line, because we need smart, talented girls like you in the other positions in motorsports. So I'm going to be thinking good thoughts for you to get there. Yeah. Well, I just want to tell you thanks again for being here. I know you've had a busy day already, so I'm going to stop the recording, but just hold on till we're done. That's it for this episode of the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. We hope you've been inspired by the stories I shared today and feel more connected to the amazing community of women in motorsports. Remember, whether you're behind the wheel, in the pits, or cheering from the stands, your story matters. And together, we're driving change and celebrating every milestone. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who loves motorsports as much as you do. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for updates, behind the scenes content, and more incredible stories. So until next time, stay inspired, stay connected, and keep racing through life. This is the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, where every woman's story is worth celebrating.